Welcome to Shard Squad, Pernapple standing by.
Beluga standing by, and today we're going to be talking about what we believe will be the next legendary event taking place sometime January 2018.
And just so you know, there might be some minor spoilers for The Last Jedi, so if you haven't seen the movie, go do that.
And with that out of the way, we believe the next character will be General Hux of the First Order. We mainly believe this because the January login characters are Finn and Poe, and that usually indicates that there will be some sort of event featuring characters of those faction tags. So we might be looking at some sort of resistance type event.
We also seem to believe this because there hasn't been that much content coming out for this new movie. There's only been 2 new First Order characters. They only really added Rey. That's not a lot for a new movie. And with Finn and Poe being released as these daily characters, that kind of tends to point towards a new event with those characters. Most likely it would be a brand new legendary event introducing someone from the opposite side, being the First Order.
We also could see this event mirroring Thrawn's in its difficulty because of the high amount of players with a geared resistance team. So we could look at a high minimum requirement of at least gear 10, I could imagine, or somewhere in that area.
A big reason why we think that it's going to be requiring a pretty heavy gear set team is because a lot of past legendary events have actually required teams that a lot of people don't have in the first place, which is more of the panic farming that they kind of seem to like lately. But with Resistance, so many people have that Finn Zeta or, you know, the new Rey. There's such a good team already and they're so strong that it'd be hard to imagine them making a pretty easy event when they know a good chunk of their higher end players would pass it without question.
Right, and due to how crucial Resistance itself is in territory battles, and a lot of people just have them geared up and ready to go with Zetas on Finn, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people already had Zetas on Rey.
Another big reason why we think it's going to be Hux instead of someone like Snoke per se is because we believe that Hux played a bigger part within the 2 movies, and it was also going to be a better pick for something later on, something like a fleet commander, since he seems to be commanding most of the First Order fleets. It just kind of works in that way.
We also think it's not going to be Snoke's ship because the Supremacy is a mega-class star dreadnought, which seems to be a step above the capital ships we've seen so far.
By leaps and bounds.
Like a third of the goddamn Death Star. Like, the thing's fucking huge. We don't want that shit in the game. It would take up the whole goddamn screen. We wouldn't be able to see goddamn shit. We already can't. I have trouble targeting or seeing what the fucking debuff is on the ship behind the fucking third one because it's already in the fucking corner. How am I supposed to see past a goddamn Supremacy? The shit would be like a fucking giant fin protruding from my goddamn phone.
I think that would be really exciting actually to get a brand new command ship, even though a lot of people don't even have the Chimera that just came out whatever couple months ago. It hasn't even returned yet, but ships is so empty and needs something to give it some life, and a First Order fleet might be pretty interesting. It's probably one of the only other factions that have a decent amount of ships connected to it. Now with the First Order Advanced or whatever the
Special Forces TIE Fighter. I think a lot of those ships that just came out, the TIE Silencer and the Special Forces TIE Fighter, have a lot of potential, but we won't know for sure until people are able to star them up properly. I think the fact that the First Order ships focus more on speed is really interesting, and I think it could potentially usher in some much needed change to the lineup of capital ships we see so far. And we think that Hux could be more of a support character in that he kind of is in a position of power throughout the movie, but he mainly represents the troop force as a whole in that he's treated kind of like a little bitch throughout the entire time, and he's just thrown around and treated with no respect by Kylo or Snoke. And so we don't think he'd have any sort of leader ability whatsoever. He would mainly be a BB-8 type character or an R2-D2 in that he would kind of just sit in the background and just buff the team around him, making First Order better and kind of being that key piece they've been missing so far.
And as we said before, they just added 2 new First Order characters that no one's really seemed to know how to use yet. The First Order still seems very weak in the grand scheme of the game. Even with the new leadership under Unmasked Kylo, they seem to underperform compared to some of the newer teams, especially with a new Rey. She's destroying it in Arena right now. So we're hoping that a General Hux being introduced will be enough to kind of boost that team into like the top tiers of the game.
Looking at the First Order right now, I see at least 4 characters that fit really well in the whole scheme of things. Right now, the weakest seems to be First Order Officer from what I can see, and slotting in a character like General Hux into that spot, I believe he'll have a lot of synergy with the 2 new characters that just came out, Unmasked Kylo Ren or Matt the Radar Technician, and Special Forces TIE Fighter Pilot, which everyone just got off of farming the veterans, so it would be interesting to see people sort of panic for the top tier First Order team when low-key Matt's been sitting right there the whole time, and everybody would panic farm him, grab all his crystals from the shop. And
that's the true spirit of this game.
And that's the true spirit of this game, making money, because at the end of the day, they're going to do whatever gets them the most money at the time. And what better way than to drop a low-key OP character that just needs one little boost, one little friendly nudge to become ridiculous.
And we see this time and time again a lot with legendary characters that, you know, when R2 came out or BB-8 came out, a lot of people believe them to be kind of underpowered, not great for a lot of things. BB-8, a lot of people thought was only going to be viable in raids, but now he's, you know, top of the leaderboards on Arena. So I feel like that might be like the inverse, where we get, you know, the really good character that does a lot of stuff with Unmasked Kylo, but it's gonna take General Hux to kind of slot into that spot to really make that character
stand out.
Yeah. There's also a lot of aspects of the First Order kit that really isn't there yet, and Hux does have a kind of character that you could slot in some abilities. First Order's in desperate need of someone to cleanse a lot of stuff, especially with resistance teams being so reliant on exposes. It would work out to kind of counteract the resistance, which the First Order should be doing in the first place. And we see that teams a lot of the times are revolved around certain buffs and debuffs. As I said, resistance rely a lot on expose, and right now First Order seems to be focused a lot on advantage and retribution, so Hux can do a lot more for that.
I think right now the First Order are in an area where Qui-Gon Jinn Zeta lead teams are, and that they're not quite top tier. They're like tier 1 almost, in that they're really good, but only to a certain extent, and they're not quite meta. They're just right on the edge, about to burst through that cusp, and I think General Hux would be the thing to push them in.
Matt actually has a really great leadership ability right now. Merciless Pursuit gives First Order allies 40% critical damage plus 30 speed. When a First Order ally scores a critical hit, they gain 20% turn meter, and when a First Order ally gains a status effect, they recover 5% health and 5% protection. That is phenomenal for a team, and right now we're kind of thinking that Hux could sort of make that even greater, possibly giving so many buffs that it will really bolster that 5% health and protection, and it would really make the First Order kind of a lot more beefy, a lot harder to kill.
Not to mention the 5% health and protection recovery would help a lot when facing against resistance team, which seem to pump out massive amounts of damage by applying debuffs like expose. This could also heavily counter Rey's mind trick ability, which dispels all buffs on a target enemy and inflicts ability block, daze, offense down, and speed down for 2 turns, which, assuming that each effect stacks, would grant them 5% health and protection for each of those debuffs, with no damage applied to it. Can't be evaded either, so that's pretty much a death sentence for a lot of teams right there. However, if you can bend that into a positive thing, it's going to make a lot of teams think twice before they cast it on a person, because you might end up giving them a ton of health and protection rather than, you know, basically eliminating them from the fight. So that being said, Matt's a really strong character to begin with. We just think he's missing something, and that something is going to be General Hux this month.
We'd also like to see Hux have some sort of AoE, possibly the orbital bombardment from the film, but what that would do, even though everyone seems to be kind of worried about using AoE in this meta right now, is actually Kylo having that auto taunt right away. If Hux could go first, or at least somewhere near first, everyone would be attacking Kylo, but every time Kylo gets hit, he recovers 8% health, and a random First Order ally gains advantage for 2 turns. And that would be insane to pretty much start the game having your entire team gain advantage while Kylo sort of takes the blunt of the damage.
Which he'd recover right away anyway, because he recovers health on Focus Rage for total physical damage dealt. That paired with the extra speed from Matt's leader ability would make for a pretty scary, quick team that's light on its feet and deals massive amounts of crit damage.
And if General Hux is what we kind of believe him to be, which would be a very strong First Order support character, this might change the arena again. We just had this huge mix-up with Rey being introduced, Night Sisters kind of make their way in. There's been a lot of changing going on, but the First Order is still really weak, and that's kind of why we believe that General Hux is going to be this next legendary character coming out sometime in January, because we really want to see the First Order make their stand in the arena.
And not even just the First Order. I think the Night Sisters and the First Order are a much needed change to kind of bring Darkseid to some sort of forefront. The last time we saw Darkseid anywhere near the top arena was with Zal teams way back in, must have been February or January of this past year. And just to clarify, all of this is just speculation. We have nothing outside of the logging characters to make us believe that this is factual at all. However, given past events and past logging characters, they seem to sync up very well, and I imagine within the next week or two, we could hear some news or teases about this event coming up, if it's a thing.
And this is actually the first video of Shard Squad, so we're kind of getting new to it. We're trying to figure out how we want to proceed through this channel, but we're very interested in kind of making new theories, figuring out kind of ahead of time what you should be farming. But if you like what you see, please subscribe. It would mean so much, but we're going to try to get better. We're going to be here. We appreciate if you come back, and we'll see you next time. This is Shard Squad signing out.